All right, we are ready to soak. When you start, you want to have a book of some sort that has clean, straight pages because that's where you're going to dry the cards. So I like to use the thick auction catalogs, and as you use it, you'll like turn the pages kind of wet and they'll warp, and you can only use one auction catalog so long. And if you did it to a book you like, that wouldn't work too well because you'd screw the book up. So also need clean white printer paper, some cards. Normally I use paper towels for like the dabbing, but right now napkins is what we got. And for like real nice cards that you want to make sure you don't damage at all in any possible way, I use dice to hold them down in the water. If you're dealing with like lower grade cards, like I don't worry too much about putting a penny on them and having that possibly leave an indent. One time I used a card and could clearly see a dime imprint on it. I think that's the only time it ever happened. So, and then here's the Pyrex bowl. You just need something that has a perfectly smooth surface, and really the bigger the better. So this works for me because I can do 2 or 3 cards at a time. So, all right, I don't have a tripod, so I'm just gonna have to put this down in between. So here are a couple low-grade cards with some residue on the backs. Not gonna make these any better in terms of grade, but they can look nicer. So you just kind of put them down in there. Use something to hold the cards. At first they want to kind of float, but they'll take on water and they won't want to float as much after that. Typically I'll leave them for about 2 minutes at this point, and at that point is when I'll start working on them. And what that looks like is essentially I'm just really carefully seeing what will come off with just the use of like a fingernail. And some adhesives come off really easily, and others are just tougher, and then there's some that you can't really do much. You're just kind of stuck with the card the way it looks. You never want to try too hard to get the added paper off, because you'll just end up tearing it and the paper on your card off. So it's kind of a art to figuring out what you can and can't do, and something that you just have to get used to over time, which is why it's best to start with some, $15 beater cards. At this point, I've soaked some pretty valuable cards, but it wasn't until I'd done the process, at least 100 times with lower value cards before I got comfortable. So I'm going to pause it, and then we'll come back in a second and see if there's any movement on the paper. And here's what we're dealing with. We got the spot there on the bottom right, top left, and then this card. It's kind of all over the place on this one. It's definitely a lot easier when you can really see it, like the Sovereign. The Tolstoy, the added paper is kind of like getting wet and just sort of fading in with the card, and those are always a little tougher. They take more work, and you've got more risk of screwing it up. So I really need a tripod for this to actually make this the best video, but I will try and show what I do here. My method is I use the front of my fingernail and just kind of slide it across the area. And you'll usually, if you do it right, you'll be able to tell like whether or not this paper is going to come up for you or not. Always just want to go real slow. Test all the edges, and sometimes one edge will want to come up real easy and the others don't. This one may end up being a pretty poor choice for a demonstration.